Because unlike social media kits, proper testing isn't quick. It's not flashy. It can't be sold with a discount code. So if a healthcare professional suspects a true food allergy or intolerance, there's a well-established way of investigating it.
Hello and welcome back to the How to Fitness podcast. I'm Kate Lyman.
And I'm Michael Ujo.
And we have a deep dive today. Really excited always, but I think that my relationship with so much information and the wellness industry has changed a lot since we've started our podcast. I think there was a time pre-podcast when I was just pretty cynical, and every topic come up, I'm like, it's not that important. Like, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a wellness scam or whatever. Not everything, but you know what I mean? And now with the way we do our deep dives, with how in tune we are with everything that's going on in the wellness industry, I feel like I'm always learning so much more about the nuance. And that's my lead into today's episode. I'm really excited about this episode, which I was like, Michael, please do this.
Yeah.
Because I want to know about food intolerance tests. And I feel like my previous insight was like, well, there was a point where I thought it was probably a real thing. And then there was a point where I was like, it's all just BS. And now I'm really excited to learn the nuance.
I'm excited for listeners to listen to this episode. I didn't know enough about this before. I always kind of knew a little bit, but just little snippets that I've been told. But I'm so glad that I've done this deep dive into this episode. To be quite blunt, I'm horrified by what I found from doing the research for this episode. I'm genuinely quite pissed off with what I found as a result of looking into this. And
That's really strong words from you.
Yeah, honestly, I was, so after I do all the research and I kind of build the script together, I sit having dinner and I chat through it with Emma. You probably do the same with Kenny.
I do the same. Yep.
Yeah, I chat with my wife Emma, and she could tell I was getting really annoyed, but she was horrified as well. I just don't know how it's allowed to get to this point. So I'm really excited for people to listen. That's built the episode up quite a lot, right? But honestly, I think everyone listening to this is going to be pretty horrified about the state of food intolerance testing and kind of everything that encompasses. It's wild.
Good. We're not horrified by enough things on the regular. So let's.
Hey guys, the world's really calm right now. Do you want to listen to something that's awful? Then buckle up. And I'm looking forward to doing today. So just a quick fun fact before we get into this script, okay? Do you know how much? This maybe is a bit of a harsh question to ask because it's a random number. But do you know how much the intolerance test market is estimated to be worth at the moment?
No, but it's got to be $1 billion or whatever.
So
no, probably not $1 billion. Millions, hundreds of millions.
Brace yourself. So the intolerance test market is estimated to be valued at about $15.43 billion in 2025, and is expected to reach $24.78 billion by 2032. That's not small numbers.
What? No, I am not on the side. Everything's our algorithm now, right? We only see the things that are. I don't watch TV. I don't know. I just whatever advertising I get is based on social media and my internet searching. I don't see food intolerance tests. I've never been pitched a food intolerance test. Have you?
I think I did once, but that's because I went away and did some research for a client of mine because they were asking me about a specific test, and then I got bombarded by that company. But otherwise, no. It's not. However, I will in this episode, I'm going to talk about my history with food intolerance and that kind of thing, because I think it's important, because it gives context to why these companies do so well. But yeah, I'm not really the bracket that usually gets targeted by this stuff, luckily.
I think my point there is I'm out of tune. I'm out of tune with how prolific that this industry is, because that's not really... I'm not being targeted with it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure many people are. Probably the menopausal women as well.
Absolutely.
Just seems like they're always targeted.
Yeah, they certainly are. And there are certain demographics that just get bombarded by this. And because of frustrations of the way maybe healthcare systems are set up, or kind of just the way that we're told about food intolerances and sensitivity through things like social media and mainstream media, I'm not surprised that this has reached this point. But I'm still horrified that it's allowed to continue in the way that it is. Yeah.
I think this will be such an interesting conversation, given that I know you do have a lot of food intolerances. I'm not coming from a place of I have allergies, but not intolerances. So that's why I'm not that target population. But on the flip side, my sister, who has Crohn's disease and is chronically ill, has dealt with so many food issues her whole life. And so I know that she's gone down this whole rabbit hole of like, anything, fix me, help me.
Sure.
Right. And
Exactly.
that's such a vulnerable place to be, and such a challenging place to be, especially when you're bombarded by, what was it, $15 billion of,
Yeah.
of business.
Yeah. Honestly, it's wild. So should we jump in?
Let's do it.
Let's
I'm
do
very
it.
excited.
Let's do it. So I'm going to guess that at some point in the last few years, many of our listeners have either taken or seriously considered taking a food sensitivity or food intolerance test. Please do reach out to us, by the way, if you're listening to this episode and you've gone through this. I know if you listen on certain platforms, you can leave a comment. So please let us know, because I would love to read them. But you probably know the ones. There's like the little finger prick blood test, a strand of hair in an envelope, someone waving a vial near your arm. Not making this up. And then before you know it, you're suddenly intolerant to like eggs, dairy, wheat, tomatoes, almonds, oats, alcohol, whatever it is. And basically anything that brings you joy is suddenly off limits. And I'm sure you've probably seen these scenarios play out with clients in the past. And the worst part, though, is a lot of people don't take these tests because they're bored or they are intrigued. A lot of them take it because they genuinely don't feel great and they want answers that they're not able to get elsewhere. They might have things like bloating, gut issues, low energy, skin problems, brain fog, or even just like a vague sense of like something's not quite right and no one's listening to me, So that's why a lot of people turn to these things. And then when a test suddenly promises us really quick, instant answers that we can't get elsewhere, I completely get the appeal. And a list also feels quite comforting as well. Like it feels quite scientific, but it usually isn't. More on that in a minute. And it feels like someone has finally kind of like figured you out, which no one else has in the past. But the uncomfortable questions that I want to tackle in today's episode are like, do food intolerance or food sensitivity tests actually work? And if they don't, why are they absolutely everywhere? And without spoiling kind of the entire episode, some of these tests aren't just a bit inaccurate. Some of them have absolutely no scientific basis at all. Following the results can sometimes do us more harm than good as well. So in this episode, this isn't to shame anyone or judge anyone for going down the route of using these tests, because I get it. I've been there and I get how desperate people can become. But I just think we need to provide a little bit of balance and a little bit of evidence base behind the absolute nonsense with no fear-mongering involved at all. So that's my goal today, Kate.
Always the goal. Wait, have you done one of these tests yourself?
No, I haven't. Mainly because I think, so I'll explain my story of where it's actually why I'm doing the job that I am today. So about 11, 12 years ago, I just started feeling really unwell, right? Something wasn't right. My digestive system was getting really blocked up, was having trouble going to the toilet. And I was going back and forth to my GP constantly. And they kept being like, nope, everything's fine, no issues. I had blood tests. I got sent for hospital checkups. I had cameras put inside of me, literally only for everyone to say, no, there's no issue. Like, carry on. Everything's fine. And when something isn't right. And the amount of doctors and specialists that I saw throughout that process of maybe like 3 to 6 months, no one ever suggested diet to me at all.
Wow.
And I'd like to think maybe now they would, because this was 12 years ago, maybe not. And it only came down to me Googling my symptoms and like feeling desperate that someone on a random forum, I think on Reddit maybe, said, oh, these are symptoms I had and I was lactose intolerant. I was like, oh, maybe I should just cut out all these different foods. I don't encourage anyone to do that. Please do it with a specialist. But I just basically followed my own elimination diet and realized I was intolerant to eggs and dairy. And it literally was like one day to the next, I was so unwell and I was fixed, like done, no issues at all.
Wow.
And it was just so frustrating. And that kind of sparked my love and interest of nutrition. I then trained to be a personal trainer. I then started doing nutrition studies along the side of my personal training qualifications. And that's why I'm here today, I guess. So a good thing came out of it, but it means I fully understand why people end up going down the route of paying for these really expensive tests, because I was desperate. I felt so awful, but all these professionals were saying that I was fine. So yeah. That's why I'm glad to do this episode today, actually.
Yeah, that's like kind of such a classic story in the worst way of like not being heard, having to go on your own Reddit health journey. Mm-hmm. We've all been there.
Yeah.
And luckily you had some good things come out of it, right? Like that's great because it landed you here, but that's really hard.
Yeah, it sucks. So let's dive into all these tests and everything. So before we go anywhere near the tests and like bloods and hair samples and stuff, we need to start off with some language. And this is important for a reason, because one of the biggest reasons people get sucked into dodgy food testing is that we use the same words to mean completely different things. We have food allergy, food intolerance, and food sensitivity, and they're not the same thing, and it really matters. So let's start with food allergy, the most important one, arguably, because this is the most serious and the least misunderstood, but it's still misunderstood in health spaces because people like to profit from it. A food allergy involves the immune system. So usually what we're talking about is an IgE mediated reaction. So it's like an immunoglobulin E reaction. And this is like a specific type of antibody response. So in very plain English, your immune system thinks that a food is dangerous and it reacts really fast to it. And this can be things like hives, swelling, vomiting, breathing difficulties, and in some cases like anaphylaxis, shock as well. So this is not something you self-diagnose, and it's not something you test for with a home kit. Usually it's done through like skin prick tests, blood tests, and then sometimes supervised food protocols with like a dietitian or whatever. And if someone has a genuine food allergy, the goal is like safety. First of all, we shouldn't really mess about with this. So if you do consider that you have a food allergy, don't listen to this episode and do what I say, like please go and see your GP/PCP as soon as possible. Okay, so then we're going to move on to food intolerance. So food intolerance is a completely different beast because food intolerances do not involve the immune system in the same way, and they're usually about digestion, absorption, or how much of something your body can handle before symptoms show up. And the classic example here is my case that I just mentioned, and that's lactose intolerance. Like I'm not allergic to milk, I'm not going to have a severe reaction, but my body doesn't anymore create the lactase enzyme in order to break down the milk. So it kind of passes through my digestive system in a way that isn't normal, in air quotes, and I have really awful kind of gastrointestinal symptoms as a result. The thing with intolerances is they're often dose dependent and context dependent too. You might not tolerate a certain food one day, but then the next day be okay with it, and it depends on like sleep, stress, portion sizes, and all that kind of stuff. So food intolerances is different, and then we have food sensitivity, which is one. Go for it, Kate.
Sorry, my bike
you being blinded?
Mirror, do you see me being blinded?
I can.
The sun is hitting the mirror on my bike.
No. Go for it. Just move it about. Kate is moving the mirror. Or Kate's just vanished. Oh, you're back. You're back.
Oh my gosh. There was a moment where I was like, I'm going to lose my vision.
I really respect you still staring at me on the screen.
I've got like black blobs in my right eye. Anyway,
I feel like this needs to stay in the episode. Okay, so next we're going to move on. Also, it gave me a chance because I was sitting on my foot for all of that, and I realized that my foot has gone completely numb. So if you're watching this on video, you realize that I've changed position massively because I was not feeling good. Food sensitivity is where things get quite messy, okay? So food sensitivity, I am using air quotes when I say food sensitivity for anyone who's not watching the video, because it isn't a medical diagnosis, right? It's a catch-all term that gets used when someone has symptoms. There is no kind of like defined definition of this. And this is where a lot of these companies pounce and will use it in advertising. But it's when we suspect that food is involved, but there's no clear allergy or intolerance diagnosis there. And just to be really clear, like this is still a thing. Symptoms still are real. Things like bloating or pain or brain fog, just feeling rubbish after eating food. But sensitivity doesn't tell us why it's happening. And that's where people often end up chasing these tests. And this is where social media once again runs riot, because the mix up is where a lot of home testing companies kind of quietly thrive by using all this catchy terminology. Because if you blur the lines, I guess, between like allergy, intolerance, food sensitivity, then you can sell one test that claims to explain everything. And there is currently no validated blood test that can diagnose most food intolerances. Like a really important point there. It's not me being cynical. This is literally the position of major professional bodies like the British Dietetics Association and the NHS. And I do just once again want to make this clear before we go any further that if you feel bad after eating, that does not mean that it's all in your head. I've been told this in the past. It was in my head. There's nothing wrong with me. That doesn't mean that at all. But it does mean that we need to be careful about the tools that we use in order to explain why we're not feeling good. Because if we use the wrong tool or the wrong test in this case, we don't just get the wrong answers. We often get too many answers, and that's where people end up avoiding unnecessary foods and kind of going down a really slippery slope. So yeah, that's how we're feeling about this, Kate.
No, I'm appreciating all this information. I'm thinking so much about the context in which I work with my clients, and how someone coming to me with a food sensitivity test sometimes is the bane of my existence. Like, because it just it really perpetuates ideas of food fear, and some of those, the sensitivity or the intolerance, so real, and some of them, it's fear of gluten and dairy because gluten and dairy are inflammatory. I've got my air quotes up right there, but completely context dependent and person dependent. And it made me think, I'm always, when I get a new client intake, I'm always looking through it so carefully, and any allergies, intolerances they mention, I note them obviously, and I take them very seriously. But so often it will be something like pizza, or like gluten and dairy makes me feel bad, because the overall dietary pattern is I'm white knuckling my way through the week trying to eat clean, and then when I have a piece of pizza, I actually dive headfirst into the whole box and eat a half pizza. Is it a sensitivity, or is it that eating an entire half pizza when you've restricted yourself all week doesn't feel good?
It's a difficult one, right? Because as a coach, you obviously you don't want to bring any shame or judgment on the person that's coming to you for help, because you understand why they've got to that point. But then you also have to kind of gently remind people that actually maybe what you've been told by the random naturopath that sold you a intolerance testing kit for $700 probably didn't have your best interests at heart. So yeah, it is a fun balancing act, but I'm sure you get it right, Kate.
Yeah, once we start digging into their own dietary patterns with them in mind and no one else telling them what to do, just like observing, then we can often see, oh, maybe it's not gluten or dairy, but the dietary patterns overall. So anyway,
yeah,
you know it. You get it.
It's a very good point. So now that we've cleared up what allergy, intolerance, and sensitivity kind of mean, let's talk about what proper testing looks like, because this is also one of the biggest myths out there that a lot of these companies use, and a lot of like functional medicine practitioners or whatever. I don't want to criticize any titles, because there's probably some great people that use these titles within their names. However, there's a lot of things that people will say about kind of medical professionals that is just not right. And one of the biggest myths out there is that doctors don't test for food problems or don't have any knowledge on nutrition. It's not true. They just test very specific things in a very specific way, and that's where people get frustrated. Because unlike social media kits, proper testing isn't quick, it's not flashy, it can't be sold with a discount code. So if a healthcare professional like suspects a true food allergy or intolerance, there's a well-established way of investigating it. And these, once again, can include like skin prick tests, blood tests measuring IgE antibodies, and in some cases, supervised food protocols, again, with a dietitian. And then these are also not just the tests themselves, they're also then interpreted alongside your symptom history, timings of reactions, like the amount of food involved, like your overall health picture, because that needs to be taken into consideration. And that context is absolutely crucial, because a test result without any context is just a number. Like that's all it is. It's close to useless. And this is why you also don't diagnose food allergies with home kits too, because they can be life-threatening, and testing needs to be done in a really safe and specific way. Yeah, it's a very bizarre world, food intolerance testing kits. And I genuinely, after doing this episode, I am hoping that I'm gonna pursue this, and I'm gonna be an absolute pain in the ass on social media of bugging these companies for some decent evidence for the things that they're selling, because this shouldn't be allowed. Like, it is absolutely sickening what goes ahead. So I kind of want to jump into like the main bulk of what I'm going to talk to.
I'm very excited.
Yeah, so this is the bit that most people listening are probably waiting for. So let's talk home intolerance and home sensitivity tests themselves and what they claim to do, and why so many professionals say they don't work. So most home intolerance tests promise the same thing, right? They say that they can identify foods your body doesn't agree with. Once again, vague terms. They explain vague symptoms like bloating or fatigue, and they give you a very clear list of foods to avoid, right? And they often do this using language like immune response or subclinical inflammation or hidden intolerances and all these kind of little red flags. I mean, it all sounds very impressive and all very, very convincing. Probably the most common one you'll see is the IgG food test, right? So most, not all, but most of like the big food intolerance testing websites will use IgG food tests. And these involve a finger prick blood sample, right? And then this is tested for IgG antibodies to lots of foods, right? So the claim here that these companies make is that higher IgG levels mean that you are intolerant to the food. But there's a problem. So IgG antibodies usually show up from exposure, not from intolerance. So in other words, if you eat a food regularly, then your body is more likely to have IgG antibodies to it. And please let this sink in. This is really important. So these tests often flag foods you eat the most, not foods that are actually harming you. It's wild.
So then you're getting a list back of the foods you most commonly eat as the culprits for your sensitivities.
But it's actually just foods you've been eating. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is why like major professional organizations, again, like the British Dietetics Association, many in the US as well, explicitly state IgG testing should not be used to diagnose food intolerance or food sensitivity. Like they are saying that these tests should not be being used. It doesn't tell you what's causing the symptoms, and it just tells you what you have been eating. So it's honestly insane. So I just wanted to quickly explain how this test is done as well, because it's funny and horrific as well, because it's really important and often really misunderstood. When you do an IgG food test, nothing is being tested inside your body, right? These tests are done in vitro. You'll see this around research, the terminology quite a lot. And basically it means like in a test tube or in a Petri dish or whatever. A blood sample is taken and in a lab is exposed to food proteins in a Petri dish or test tube. The lab then measures whether IgG antibodies in your blood binds to these proteins of the different foods. That's it. Like nothing about digestion. There's no digestion involved at all. No gut involved, no nervous system, no symptoms. It doesn't tell us how your body reacts when you eat this food. It just tells you that antibodies in your blood recognize it. So this reason this really matters is because food intolerance isn't just about an immune recognition at all. It's about so much more, about like digestion, absorption, gut function, dose, all these kinds of things. And an in vitro test can't capture any of that. So even if the lab process is technically accurate, which it's not, in measuring IgG binding, it doesn't mean it's clinically meaningful at all.
That's okay. If you're watching the YouTube, I was just kind of like slack jawed.
Okay, lift your chin up.
Most of that,
honestly,
because I've just what I said at the intro. I've just kind of been like, these don't work, but I haven't had the context as to why. And the implication of someone feeling really poorly, going to a test, receiving a report back that shows them all the foods they have been eating are now the culprits for why they're feeling poorly, and then them doing a 180 on their dietary patterns or just feeling totally like obliterated by this information. That's so upsetting.
Yeah, I don't know how this is allowed. Like, honestly,
how is it allowed?
I'm not joking at the start when I said I'm horrified. Like, I'm genuinely horrified that these companies are allowed to do this. And as I said at the start, like, intolerance test market is expected to reach $24.78 billion by 2032. And it's built on this. Like, it's built on a test that's not being recommended by any professional body. There's not enough evidence to show that it actually does anything beneficial. And this is what's propping up a whole industry, and it's sickening.
So that's all I've known, is that no professional body recognizes these tests, but I feel like they could shine some light on the why.
Agreed. Yeah.
Because I've read plenty of reports. Actually, I think the Menopausal Society has a report on it. I've read multiple, just saying like, we don't recommend these. These are not validated by any major organization. But I want more people to know the why. I mean, I guess that's what we're doing here.
That's what we're
right
doing,
now.
Kate. Yeah.
Doing the Lord's work, Michael.
Honestly, as I said, after this episode, I'm going to be such a pain in the ass for these companies because this just should not be allowed. Like, this is so, so bad. Because Because as I was reading around this episode, I was like, this can't be it, right? Like, this can't be what all of these...
That's too simplistic.
Yeah, it's too simplistic. And so I posted on my Instagram stories that I was doing this episode today, and I got so many messages from doctors, medical practitioners that work in this field being like, thank you so much for doing an episode on this, because this just shouldn't be allowed. Like, the amount of people that are then, we'll talk about this in a bit, but they're taking the results of these tests, cutting out all these foods that absolutely should be part of a healthy diet, part of their healthy diets that they've eaten for a long period of time, because this is just flagging foods that they eat regularly, and cutting them out. And then it opens them up to deficiencies and sorts of things too. And it's honestly wild.
Not to mention, it's probably not a problem solver to then do a 180 on your diet and incorporate all new foods. And you probably have no relief from whatever symptoms you're going through.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Wow.
So I will also just touch on the other tests that are out there, because they're as ridiculous, if not more ridiculous, actually. This one I wasn't going to talk about it, but I thought it's so unhinged that I kind of want to, and that's like applied kinesiology in regards to food sensitivity testing. And this is where someone tests muscle strength, often by pressing on your arm whilst you hold a food. Sorry, I got... whilst you hold a food, or even like holding a vial that supposedly represents a food. And the idea is that your muscle becomes weaker if your body doesn't like the food. I'm using air quotes. This is stuff that's being sold online. It's completely unhinged. Have you seen videos of this on the internet? I've seen influencers standing in shopping centers holding a food to their chest, and like they lean forward or back depending on if the food agrees with them.
I always have called that energy testing.
There's so many different terms for this. Yeah,
like,
honestly.
Or where you do this. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Kate's like pulling her fingers apart.
And then if they like come apart, you're like, oh no, that's not a good one. No, it's like, okay, I know people who do that. So yeah.
It's crazy. And there's no plausible biological mechanism for this. And when this has been studied under any controlled conditions, I feel so sorry for the researchers having to do this. Like, really? The results are no better than chance, because that's all it is.
Yeah.
So... I mean, less said about this one, the better, but I kind of wanted to mention it because there are a lot of people and it's becoming more popular, crazily.
I think what I can't believe here is that people are selling this solution.
Yeah.
Like, I understand, like, my mom did this, so now I do this. Or I don't know, that's the only, like, reasonable explanation I can find. But people selling this solution is baffling to me.
Honestly. It's wild. And then the next one, which is more common, like a bit more mainstream, is a hair analysis test. I don't know if you've seen these at all, Kate. And this usually involves sending off a strand of your hair, which is then analyzed for supposed reactions to food. And this might, or well, maybe not. It might not surprise people, but there is no known connection between hair composition and food intolerance at all. Like, hair is a dead tissue. It doesn't reflect immune responses at all. It doesn't reflect our digestion. And yet people will send these off and then we'll receive a really long list of foods to avoid based on what their hair is telling them.
I could imagine that a hair analysis, this is just me kind of thinking out loud, could show what you have eaten, almost like the IgG test. Like, it can reflect what you ate to some extent. But how would it even show a digestive response?
I don't know.
I know you don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, being like, what?
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, the reality is, if you put a lot of scientific words on a process and you call it validated or scientifically rigorous or whatever you want, like, that feels believable.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of like the IgG, so the one I just spoke about before this, about like the in vitro testing, I believe that I saw this kind of mentioned on a few podcasts and websites looking into this topic, in that the companies are using a document or a study or like a review from 1980 something that had some like vague recommendations of using these tests for food intolerance testing, and then these companies now kind of use that as a pass to do this kind of testing, despite there being absolutely no like recent high quality evidence showing that they work in any way, or that the results you get are in any way beneficial, without taking into consideration the wider context. Yeah. I'm
Googling right now, actually, because I'm not totally familiar with like the brands that sell this, and I'm wanting to look and be like, oh yeah, I recognize that, which I do. I recognize that we, specifically the IgG food sensitivity testing. I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen this.
Yeah, because I was thinking when I was looking at this, I was like, oh, maybe like the big companies that are really popular don't use the IgG. So I was like, oh, let's try and find the list of which companies use it. The big ones all use it. Like, this is the test that they're using. So yeah, it's crazy time. So I just wanted to kind of quickly touch on like the potential harms. I did touch on this a second ago, but like the potential harms of using unvalidated food intolerance testing. Because I guess some people listening to this maybe will be like, well, I mean, if it's making people analyze their diet a little bit closer, maybe they can make some healthier changes. But the concern kind of raises about people experimenting with food, I guess is probably the worry here. It's about what happens when unreliable tests give very confident instructions that people have to stick to. Like one of the most common outcomes of these tests is like over restriction, right? People aren't told to remove one or two foods. Like these tests don't just say, oh, it's tomatoes, you know? They send you a list usually of like 30, 40, sometimes like up to 60 foods that you should avoid. And these are like multiple staple foods, entire food groups, or dozens of foods at the same time. And when food starts to feel like a minefield, eating stops being supportive and it becomes incredibly stressful, and that can have huge ramifications. And it's basically the reason I wanted to do this episode today, because I get asked about this so often, and I selfishly wanted to know more about the topic, but also so many people are wasting their money here and being harmed by these tests in so many different ways, and they can encourage disordered eating and lead people down the routes of eating disorders, and that can be heartbreaking to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about how one of the goals we have with the individuals we work with, Michael, is to help them feel more confident in like their ability to listen into their own bodies, right? Which is so much easier said than done when we're bombarded by so much information all the time. But I imagine that the results of a test like this would just override that further, right?
Sure.
Like, oh, actually, I thought I felt kind of okay with tomato,
Right.
but this test says no, so I must not.
Yeah, I get this totally, because I have a very sensitive stomach. Like obviously I've got these intolerances, so I can't do eggs and dairy. Like those are the two things that completely set me off. But I do find as well that when I'm very stressed, when my sleep is very bad, which is probably the last 2 to 3 years altogether, like foods that I'm usually absolutely fine with really flare up. And can cause me issues. And when you're just saying like, oh, this food is the issue rather than the wider context, that's also incredibly damaging, right? Because people don't start to focus on the healthy lifestyle habits that they probably should be making, rather than just blaming a certain food. Like, for example, if you tell someone to remove dairy, but they've got a potential for like calcium and iodine deficiency, that's going to be really dangerous. If someone's already eating not very much fiber and then you're telling them to completely remove grains, then that's going to have some serious issues too. So one restriction might not matter in the short term, but kind of like stacked lots of restrictions all together over months and years, absolutely, it's going to have a knock-on impact, and it creates, once again, fear, anxiety around food, and that's the one that I see so regularly with the clients that I work with, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's really hard, and really just very upsetting in general. Horrifying, to go back to what you said.
Yeah, it is a very weird one. And there are some companies out there that use IgE, which is the kind of the one that has evidence behind it of being successful. But once again, if you're doing an at-home test that is just telling you like this food is the issue, once again, it's removing the entire context that's really important in order to manage your symptoms that you're having. So I just would never, ever recommend someone goes down the home food intolerance, food sensitivity testing route, just because there's too much nuance that gets missed and there's too much crap out there that's not following the evidence base in any way, and it will leave you worse off. Absolutely.
I am listening to you first off, but also as I'm like kind of scrolling through some of these, like just their web pages, these companies, like with the information you're giving me or you're sharing with us, like I'm feeling so overwhelmed with how legitimate these tests look. And I'm looking right now, like KMBO Diagnostics. It's a finger prick IgG test, 7 to 10 day turnaround. It addresses food sensitivities, inflammation, and gut barrier function.
There we go.
How would that even make sense
right?
from your finger prick test?
In a little test tube, just sticking a, yeah, exactly. It shouldn't be allowed. Like it should not be allowed.
Oh gosh, this one says IBS. It'll tell you if you have IBS. Oh, that's so
terrifying. It's terrifying.
terrifying.
I actually get a lot of emails from food intolerance testing companies that I get quite a lot of like, do you want to team up with our brand emails every single day? I ignore all of them. Like I have no interest in doing any type of brand work like that. But a lot of them are from food intolerance testing companies. And I've always just dismissed them of being like, oh, it's not my area of expertise of like diagnosing people's intolerances, you know? So I've just ignored them. Whereas now,
you're going to email back?
my responses are going to be fantastic.
Okay,
Kate.
I'm going to email back because I get those too, and I just delete everything. Like I don't want to look through anyone that it's usually a supplement or a test or an app or whatever. Let's draft up a little email.
Let's do it. Back. Yeah, absolutely. Asking for the evidence that they use, that their tests work, and what kind of thing it's going to tell me.
Yes, and how specifically IgG testing would prove something like I saw SIBO, I saw leaky gut, I saw a histamine response, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So any practitioners that are listening to this, I know a lot of the doctors that reached out to me that work in these areas, I know that they're going to reach out to you. So everyone, please get in touch with us. And I would love for us to maybe even like go into like a group chat so we could kind of draft a draft response that we can all send back to these companies. I just think, we got to fight back against it. I'm down. I'm so keen for this. I'm fired up.
I haven't 3 years of our podcast and I haven't seen you this like hype about a specific topic. So
I think it's just because I've been through that process, right? Of people telling me that nothing's wrong with me, as opposed to like the opposite, like something is wrong with you. Like they're both just as damaging. And it really makes me angry. And I am very sleep deprived, but I feel wired right now because I am so hyped to start calling these companies out. Yeah, let's do it.
Love it. I'm in.
There we go. That's food intolerance, sensitivity testing, whatever you want to call it. We got to call it out. Let's fight back. Any other kind of questions, Kate? Any follow-ups? Companies you want to throw under the bus? Then now's your chance.
No, I don't think so. I think we've learned a lot. And my hope is for those listening, especially those who have felt really just like maybe hopeless around digestive issues or something similar with their health, that they feel a little more empowered to know how to navigate the ads and the constant bombardment of this whole sector of the wellness industry, and maybe can share with others as well. I mean, the two of us aren't going to like bring down this industry. That's not the goal.
Aim big.
Actually, sorry. Maybe Michael is. But I think just the knowledge helps us be better consumers. Sure. And that's what I try to come back to every single time we do an episode is how do we be better consumers of information? I think you've helped us do that here.
Love it. Yeah, I hope so. And as always, if you enjoy these episodes, please leave us a review. Give us a little comment if you can on the platform. Share it with any friends and family. Our podcast is growing, which is very cool. We get so many lovely messages every week from people saying they're enjoying the episodes. With other topic suggestions too, we welcome those. And thank you all so much for listening, as always.
Talk soon.